to our first item under petroleum pipelines regulations. Ms. Mtoa, if you can introduce the item and guide us in terms of the presenter. Thank you.
Thank you, CEO, and good morning, members and colleagues. The item is on the determination of whether certain facilities require licenses in terms of the Petroleum Pipelines Act. We have 3 companies that have submitted the forms for us to assess and indicate whether they do require a licensing. I'll request Mr. Lukele to kindly highlight important issues on the submission. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning to everyone. The purpose of the submission is to request the REC to approve that the certain facilities, storage facilities, do not require licensing, and this is as provided for by Section 15, subsection 3 of the Petroleum Pipelines Act, as well as the bulk storage determination that was made by the Energy Regulator on 26 May 2016. And the details of the storage facilities in question are provided in paragraph 23 to paragraph 34. And the combined capacity of the facilities range from the smallest with 53 cubic meters, and the biggest one is 108 cubic meters. And the owners of these facilities have submitted and have completed and submitted the bulk storage verification forms as required. And the combined capacity of each of the 3 storage facilities are all below the current bulk threshold of 1,500 cubic meters for petroleum products excluding LPG, and are not connected to a pipeline or to a marine loading facility, and are therefore, Chair, recommended to be excluded from licensing. And it is recommended that the REC approves that the 3 storage facilities, which are listed in paragraph 48 on page 11, do not require licensing. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. And Dr. Lukele, members, any comments in terms of the submission or any points of enhancements that you may have on the submission? Please, you may do so by show of hand. Thank you. I'll note Ms. Masetti. Ms. Masetti, you may come in.
Thank you, Chairperson, for the opportunity. Chairperson, I support the recommendations. I just want to, because the submission itself, it sort of mixes issues about bulk determination. Maybe that paragraph there should be in the past, and it should just be brief in the next submissions, especially if we're no longer implementing the bulk determination, so that we can, if the those storage facilities that were previously excluded are still excluded, maybe that can be clarified to say that since in 2017 we stopped implementing the bulk determination, what then happened to those that we already communicated that they be excluded, and the fact that the provisions of the Petroleum Pipelines Act will not be applicable to those. What have we done then? So that the industry knows whether they still have obligations to the energy regulator to comply with the law, since we felt that the determination is no longer applicable for the reasons stated. But we must also just reduce that paragraph, because it tends to confuse us if it is still effective. The second thing, Chairperson, that I would like to raise is whether we do inspections, maybe just a year later or so, to those that we had excluded, just in case there are certain changes that were made by the owners of those that were previously excluded, to the extent that such changes will then trigger the licensing requirements. How do we make sure that those are not changed and therefore require licensing afterwards? Then the last point on paragraph 46, if we can just do a correct citation there of the Petroleum Products Act. I think we didn't cite it properly there. Maybe it's just an error. It says in terms of the Products Act, Petroleum Products Act, if that can be corrected. I support the recommendation, Chairperson. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Maseti. I do not see any other hand from members. Ms. Mtwa on Tatelukele, you can respond to the points raised by Ms. Maseti. Thank you.
No,
I think. Oh, okay, you can go ahead. I'll come after you. Thanks.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. And thank you for the comments, Ms. Maseti. Starting with the last one, yes, we'll note that will be corrected. Do we do inspections? Yes, we do. And then we'll provide a report on all the inspections that I've done in this financial year in our annual submission that is due by March 2024. So the inspections will be done. In particular on this one, fortunately, we have done one already, the one for Northwest. That number B, we did visit that facility. So we do it and we incorporate those visits in our schedule to licensed facilities. And the first comment, ma'am, I think I take the guidance that maybe in the next submission we'll revise what is provided there. And in the next submission of bulk, then we'll clarify the matter further. Thank you.
Maybe just to support the CO, also in the upcoming PPS meeting, we will talk about the way forward in the bulk as indicated that we need to clarify to our licensees what is happening. We shall do so. And also to note that we will ensure that we do occasionally site visit after a couple of years or after a year to continue to ensure that there are no changes. Although we do indicate on the letters that they need to inform us, but as it's per our compliance requirement, we will ensure that we always schedule them for follow-ups. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you for those responses. I see Mr. Kumede's hand is up. Mr. Kumede.
Thank you, Chairperson. Can I just get clarity? I thought that the definition for bulk has not been reviewed and set aside, and therefore it is still valid, and we are still implementing it. Or am I misunderstanding? Thanks.
Okay. You may come in, Tatelukele. I think maybe just explain what was indicated in the previous meeting, because I think your response or your provision in the submission, it's also linked up to that. Hence, Ms. Maseti's comment to say, let's not mix the two in terms of the facilities that require licensing and those and issues relating to bulk. So just clarify that for Mr. Kumede in terms of the discussion of the last submission made in the meeting. I see Martin. Oh, let me take Mr. Mkiza. Mr. Mkiza.
Yeah, I think the team is not adequately responding in terms of clarifying the status regarding bulk by just trying to short circuit it and talk to the next presentation is going to clarify matters that relate to bulk. In the last meeting, we had a discussion around bulk, PPS meeting, and there it was also clear that we are going to then pave a way forward in terms of what needs to be done. But the bulk determination remains in place. The only thing that has not been activated in terms of bulk is it is the revocation of those facilities that are below bulk. Because you would recall, Madam said there was a time that it was suspended, and then we said let's not suspend, let's search ahead with the implementation. Hence this situation that we find ourselves in. There's been some talk around the issue of saying keep the lying dogs, let them lie, let the sleeping dogs lie. and it was, I mean, Mr. Kumete was commenting on that. And then we're of the view that we're still going to come back to the team in internal discussion to see how to move on going forward. Hence, the issue of bulk, it is partially implemented. There were also some lessons that we have learned in meanwhile, and we like, for example, sites that are at the airports, to say, considering those, shouldn't they just be licensed still irrespective of the size? And then with regard then to the other matters, I think the team has adequately responded. They must just check if they have not used Petrom Products Act elsewhere, and then have it as a for short, just to call it the Products Act vis-a-vis the Pipelines Act. But otherwise, I note what the member has said, and I've had some discussions, even individual, and also be discussing with members separately concerning how best to take this matter forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mkhize. Ms. Mtwasi, your hand is up.
Yes, thanks, CEO. Thanks, Mr. Mkhize, for that. I think in my response, I also omitted to refer members to paragraph 16, where I wanted to say that explains that following the previous decision on then 14th of June 2018, it was then lifted, and that's the status quo. Sorry, I do apologize for missing that. And also the fact that we normally, on first mention, we will say the Petroleum Products Act in full, and then in brackets will then shorten it as Product Act. But as Mr. Mkhize indicated, I will ensure that on the submission it's clarified. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. Members, are your questions responded to? I think, Mr. Kumete, on yours, I think there is a submission that will be coming from PPS on issues, to PPS on issues raised with regard to bulk determination. So they will be addressed, I hope, in that particular submission. Any other issue, members? If there's none, may I request members that we go to recommendations. They are on page 11, and it's paragraph 48. I will read them for the record. It is recommended that the REC approve that the following storage facilities do not require licensing in terms of the Petroleum Pipelines Act of 2003. And these facilities are African Thinking Management Solution, Pty Ltd. Ltd's existing storage facility in Epping, Western Cape, and which is about 53 cubic meters. Rain Dense Investment, 517 Pty Ltd's existing storage facility in Colini, Northwest Province, and it's about 138 cubic meters. And Shesha Fuels Pty Ltd's existing storage in Randburg, Gauteng Province, and it's about 78 cubic meters. Members, we are requested to approve that those facilities do not require licensing in terms of the PPA. By show of hand, can I get an indication that you do approve that they do not? Thank you, Ms. Maseti. Thank you, Mr. Kumete. I do support. I don't see. Thank you, Mr. Mkhize. Thank you very much. Mr. Mtwa and Tatelukele, your submission has been approved by the committee. We then move on to the last item, which was in the open session of our meeting. Mr. Numai, over to you.
Chairperson, I think just to quickly provide the background to the issue. The application before you members is for amendment of license conditions to incorporate a facility that was recently fully constructed by Social Gas. Mr. Nayo will introduce the submission and indicate the status of the construction in light of the earlier discussion that we had this morning and the confirmations that have been made with the license applicant with regard to where they are with the status of the operation. But really what the application is all about is the amendment of the license conditions to include that facility that has been constructed. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you.
Good morning, Chairperson. Good morning, members and to the colleagues. Yes, Mr. Nkrumah has already alluded to this application that is an amendment of license conditions by Sasol Gas in relation to its transmission pipeline. Sasol Gas has got a license to operate transmission facility from Springs all the way to Sasolburg. So therefore, if the members will recall that earlier on this year, they had considered and approved a construction license for Sasol to connect a customer that belongs to SLG. So this facility is going to be connected now to that transmission pipeline. So therefore, in terms of Section 15 of the Gas Act, Sasol Gas needs a license prior to operating that facility. So therefore, hence they're applying to amend the license conditions. Since they already have an operating license, so therefore they're only required to merely amend their license conditions so that to include that interconnection point and that new facility that Mr. Nkrumah is speaking about. Yes, Chair, we've spoken to the licensee. This facility incorporates a 10-meter pipeline, an HPSMS, and a PRS. So what tends to happen is that the PRS and the HPSMS, they are built modular on site. They are built at the workshop, where Sasol has a workshop in the Germiston, so it's part of the construction. Because of all of the intricacies there, instrumentation that goes in there, and the equipment that goes in there, it needs to be tested with the level of accuracy that can only be attained in a lab environment. So that part of construction is almost 85%. So the licensee has indicated that it will be installing the facility next week. So in essence, we can say that the construction of the facility is 50% complete, because what will be left is for them to just go and do an interconnection and then put in the modulars that they've already erected or constructed in their lab. Chair, all of the other matters in relation to finance and competition were ventilated and debated during the construction license, and therefore the applicant has already gone on and invested those monies, and therefore they'll be able to, so in order for them to be able to operate and construct this facility. They've complied with all of the relevant legislations in terms of safety, as well as they indicate they've submitted their operating standards that they'll abide by when they're operating this facility. And therefore, there were no matters of concern, Chair, that were raised. And therefore, we request that the members should approve the amendment of these license conditions that are applied for by Sasol Gas, as well as the license conditions and the reasons for decision, Chair. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Nayo. Members, there is the submission before you. Any questions, issues of clarity or points of enhancement? Please, if you have any, do so by show of hand. I think maybe from my side, Mr. Nayo, what was not coming out clear is that if you look at paragraph 8.1 on page 4, we are saying that the applicant did apply for a construction license, which was granted on the 3rd of April. But what I did not see is whether that part, the construction has been completed or not, or but it makes one assume that the team has done that inspection to see if that has been completed, such that we now are proceeding to consider the operating license. Please just correct me if I'm reading that correctly. If not, just a guideline. And I think just one point of enhancement that I thought maybe we should just try and consider is that we normally say that we did not get any comments from interested and affected parties. And again, in the same submission, we're saying there were no objection from third parties. I thought the two more or less mean the same. So if we can consider which one of these do we really use, because third parties could be interested or is normally interested, or affected parties that would have to comment. It's just a point for enhancement that one. I see Mr. Mkize's hand is up. Mr. Mkize, you come in.
Thanks, Chairperson. Just from my side to emphasize that even during the pre-hearings around this, the pre-hearing meetings, is that the concerns, by and large, they sit outside of the application because they pertain to the current legislation and policy environment. And it's going to be important for the team just to make sure that they carry that through in terms of any commentary or feedback to the policymakers around the Gas Act, But the submission itself, the recommendation, the submission, in other words, I do support. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Nayo, do you want to come in?
Okay, thank you, Chair. As indicated earlier on, Chair, the construction, the instrumentation and everything that's got to do with the HPRS is 85% complete. So that makes the project, it will be finished by next week, Chair, because all they will be left with is to interconnect and then have the facility, ready. So the applicant has indicated that by next week they'll be able to do the interconnection, and therefore within a week the project is done. Because the major part for the past 6 months was to build the HPCMS as well as the PRS, which is they have to do it in the lab, and as I said, it's almost 85% complete. Chair. Thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Numalo?
Chairperson, just to complete the picture, I think your other question was, the other issue that you raised was regarding the interested and affected parties. Just to indicate again there that interested and affected parties are really essentially the same. But what we're trying to clarify in the submission is that there were no objections. Objections is where people come forward and basically say they object to the particular project basically going ahead. And where they provide comments is where they simply basically raise particular issues, not necessarily objecting to the project itself going ahead, but interested and affected. That part is basically, there's no difference between those two. I just wanted to clarify that part as well. Thank you.
Okay, we can enhance then the submission or submissions in the future to decide how we capture these. Thank you, members. If there are no other questions or issues of clarity or points of enhancements, I would like to then request members that we go to the recommendations, and the recommendations are on, I think, page, let's get there. They are on page 10 and paragraph 20. And the recommendations are that the REC should approve the following: an application by Sasol to amend conditions related to its license to operate a gas transmission facility from Springs to Sasolburg, which is which is commonly known as Springs Sasolburg ISCO VDB transmission pipeline, under that particular license mentioned, and as well as to approve the attached license conditions, and as well as the decision and reasons for decision document. Members, by show of hand, can I get an indication that you do support the approval of the recommendations stated under paragraph 20? Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Maseti, Mr. Gomeka, Mr. Mkhize. I also do support. On that note, then, that was the last item we had for the open session of this particular meeting. And I would like to then close that session and allow members to proceed to the close part of our meeting. But let me just thank those who have attended this meeting from outside of NESA. Thank you very much for